And good morning, everybody. It is Friday. You made it through the week. Congratulations. My name is Bryan Armentrout with the Food Safety Foundation, and I'm really happy this morning here to have on the show with me my good friend Melody Gee from Corvium. How are you, Melody?
I'm good. How are you?
Good, doing good. How's the weather in your area of the country?
Good. Oh, it's actually a little bit cool down. It's like around 78, 80, and with way less humidity. So that makes me happy. It's
That's
good.
good. I mean, so yeah, Melody is kind of like the DC area, kind of
Yeah.
like around there. I'm,
Yeah.
I'm of course out in Loveland, Colorado, and this time of year is pretty warm in Colorado, but it cools down at night. So I think last night it got down into the mid 60s or so. It's currently 70 degrees, which is actually pretty warm for here for this time of morning because we don't have the humidity. And getting up to the 90s. We're getting a lot of smoke. There's a lot of fires out in California and Oregon, and it's kind of
Oh.
wrapping around and coming down to us. So we're getting the smoke. So everybody, please chime in here and let us know where you are in the world. We love to hear from you. And again, with the food safety chat, every week we have a food safety topic that we talk about. And this is not a presentation, this is a discussion. And I think today's topic is going to be one that has a lot of discussion. And of course, this goes live on LinkedIn, Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter every Friday at 8 a.m. Mountain, 10 a.m. Eastern. So today's topic, Melody, I think is going to be an interesting one for sure. So we'll get to that in just a bit. So one of the things that I'm always in such a hurry, Melody, to get to the topic, and I always forget
Oh, yeah.
to have our drink. So everybody, please join us wherever you're at for our morning drink. I have coffee, and I think Melody, you have coffee too?
Yeah. Of
Coffee.
course.
Of
Coffee.
course. So please join us, everyone. Very good. Always a great way to start the day.
Oh, yeah.
So, Melody, your title is a long title, and so I wrote it down here to make sure I get it correct. So you are the Vice President of Governance, Intelligence, and Analytics at Corvium.
Yes.
Wow, that's a lot of stuff there.
Yes. And then I know. Yeah, there's a lot of stuff there. It is. With entrepreneur, you get creative, but the intention is to help the industry with smarter food safety. With everything going on in the industry right now, our mission is to use the digital solution to help your facility with your environmental monitoring program, your sanitation practices, and your product testing practices. And then my job is we look at the identified data and combined with public data to use the data, tell the story, let the data tell us what to do, and see if we can generate better practices for our customers and for the industry. And then also I do compliance side, so make sure we are meeting the FDA, USDA requirements or any other government requirements that our customers need.
Nice. So Corvium.com. So Melody's email is on here if you'd like to reach out and learn more about Corvium. I think on the data side, you make a good point, because one of the things in quality and food safety that we're really good at is collecting data, but we don't do anything with it, right? If you collect it and you don't do anything with it, what's the point? Right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Well, and then I said this multiple times to the public as well, is first we need to collect the data. So we need to make the data from the paper to some form that we can do the analytics.
Exactly. So today's conversation, Melody, is a very interesting one. This is something that impacts everybody. Good morning, Austin. Nice to see you. Is your boss, right? If you're working for a company, you've got a boss. And even if you're an independent consultant like myself out doing things and working in the industry, you still have a boss, right? That you're working through. But within a company, your boss, I mean, they're critical, right, to your success in the company. One of the sayings I have is that you don't work for a company, you work for a boss.
In a sense, yes, exactly. And then plus to the food safety and quality industry, boss, or we call it a team leader, is extremely important, because in a sense, he's a boss and he's also an employee. He serves each layer to make the business success. And
Yeah,
for food
exactly.
safety, we need that. Yeah.
Yeah, and in particular, and that's why I wanted to talk about this topic today on kind of the people side of things, right? We have all these technical skills of food safety and FSMA and data and all these things, but it still comes down to the people side of things too. If you don't have a good team and good people, you're not going to get good results.
Mm-hmm. Yep, exactly. Exactly.
And I think that within an organization, I mean, having a good leader, a good boss in food safety is doubly important, right? Because they're really setting the tone for the whole company.
It almost like the role model of the
Mhm.
team member. What the boss do, what emotions the boss brought in, that really impact your team member. One thing I experienced, this is my personal experience, not against Corvium or anything, just my personal working experience, because I was an employee before and I become a boss sometime later in my career. I try to have my emotion neutral every time I walk in for my team's meeting, because I realized when I was the employee, I look at my boss's emotion, and then that does impact my whole day. And I think that is also quite something a good boss could lead.
Ooh, that's a really good point,
Yeah.
right? So if you go into the morning team meeting and your boss is in a bad mood,
Mm-hmm. It will impact your whole day.
everybody in the entire group is like, geez. And you bring up a good point in that it's something that as anybody within the company, leaders, employees, it doesn't matter,
Mm-hmm.
is recognizing that we all have blind spots. There's certain things that we do that everybody else sees. And here's one for me. This is kind of an embarrassing one, but so when I'm working, and I didn't know this, but when I'm working, I would be sitting in my office and I'd be at my computer and I faced the door melody, and I'd be working, right, typing away on my computer. And if I was concentrating, I had a look on my face like this, right?
That's me too.
And people would come by my office to talk with me and look in my door and go, ooh, and they would walk away. And then I didn't notice because I'm concentrating and working hard. But somebody finally brought this to my attention and they're like, well, Brian, are you mad? I'm like, well, no, why? What's up? It's like, you look mad. I'm like, right. So what I guess I had resting bitch face, I guess is what they call it, right? So I'm like, wow, I had no idea. I had no idea, right? So once I became aware of it, then I could work on it and gradually, fix that behavior because that was impacting other people in the organization and I wasn't even aware of it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Another thing I was thinking, because I was more thinking food safety and quality, and then we always talk about continuous improvement.
Uh-huh.
And as a boss or a team leader, that's also something that you could look into your employees. Obviously, every employee is different, but where are they good at?
Mm.
That it's our job or the boss's job to dig in to make it a strength to help the team. And
Yeah.
then what are they not good at it or weaknesses? And that's also depending on the culture, it's somewhere we can help them to develop so that we can all, from the people, from food safety, we all continuous improve.
Hmm. Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And so we were talking a little bit before we went live here about personality, right? We all have personalities. Myself, I'm a very introverted person. I'm perfectly fine staying at home and playing with my dog and all these type of things, right? I don't need a lot of social interaction, and those type of social interactions actually drain me, right? And there's other people, right? Of course, extroverts and type A's and these type of things. And if as a leader, you're a strong, driven type A, rah, rah, rah leader type thing, and that's the only people you hire because you don't understand introverts and you don't understand those analytical people, they're weird. And you build a team of type A personalities, you're in for a lot of hurt because all those guys are going to do is fight with each other, right? Because that's
Mm-hmm.
what they do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, one thing I heard from the course that we took at my previous employer, they were for the management and leadership, they were like always saying it's good you have a team with a combination of four major types of personality: introvert, extrovert, people person, task driven person. That way you have a very balanced team to support a business. Because ultimately, regardless you are a boss or you are an employee, you're working for the business. So if
Mhm.
you have like the team member or the boss ourselves, we have the intention that, oh, we all, what's good for the business, it's objective, and that way everything could be objective and people knows a very consistent standard to work with, because every time when they're facing a decision, they will know, okay, I'll pick the decision which works for the business. So that's also, it's a good morale in the team, like consistency, how you make the decision objectively, and what's the objective, the business value, the business benefits, and that's why we're all here working in a team.
Well said. Well said. It's very interesting. I've led quality assurance at some very large companies and had large teams, and it's an extra burden, right? So if you're the vice president in charge of purchasing, right, you have the things that you're doing. This is not to discount those activities. That's not what I'm talking about. But if you're the vice president of quality, you have all those business things that you need to do. And then you've also got the extra burden of maintaining the food safety in the company, right? You are the face of food safety within the company. And one of the things, Melody, I used to do when I would start at a new company is I would sit down with the CEO and say, okay, I'm responsible for food safety in the company. If there's any type of a crisis, right, I'm going to be the person leading those activities. And that's going to be, as the CEO, it's going to be hard for you because you're the boss and you're going to want to step up and do that. But I'm here to tell you before something happens that that's the wrong thing to do. And they're always like, right? And I'm like, no. And I would explain why that is, right? You need to have somebody who's managing the crisis and coordinating the activities. And if you have two people doing that, it sends confusing messages, right? So you have to kind of take a little bit of a back seat, and you have to explain this diplomatically and work through it. And you also have to do scenarios and training so they get used to that and don't go back to the behaviors that they normally do as a CEO. Because if you have a food safety crisis, all bets are off, right? The whole goal at that point in time is to save the company, right? Is to protect the consumers, make sure that no one is sick, and God forbid, worse things happen, and make sure that the company is able to recover and move on. And everything stops in a company if those things happen. And the CEO needs to understand that. And they need to support that, right? So as the head of quality, right, you really, really have to be able to have that message in the organization. Good morning, Corey. And push that forward and make sure that everybody understands that. I like to say, and this is what I would always teach my quality managers, Melody, is that you are the conscience of the organization. You are the person who says, this is good, this is bad, this is right, this is wrong, this passes, this fails. You're the standard. You're like the little angel on the shoulder of the plant manager or whoever it is above you, and giving them direction and saying, this is not good, right? Or, oh yeah, this is great, things are going well, right? You are guiding the ship and making sure that things are done correctly. And it's a huge burden. And I think a lot of times that pressure can really get to people.
Yeah, absolutely agree.
Yeah, because unfortunately, this is true in other career fields as well. But within quality, it seems doubly true, Melody, as well, is that unfortunately, if we do a really, really good job in food safety at what we do, nobody notices because things are going great, right?
Yeah, I always that reminds me. There's an analogy that I always use. I try not to offend or anybody, but like I feel like food safety and quality is like the IT department. Like if your computer going well, you probably wouldn't think about the IT department. If there's something wrong, you will think about them. But that's not the right. We are there. Yes, you're right. We need to have a present that we are maintaining the business smooth.
Right, exactly. And that's part of a big role of the boss, right? And this is something that they really need to push forward through the organization. So when we were preparing this, we put together some lists on your boss, right? So part of the messaging here, I think, is this is an extremely important decision for you, right? If you're working for a company, you have a boss. And that's who you work for. And I think a lot of people are too passive on this decision. You need to make sure that you're working for a good boss that you're compatible with and has these type of strengths and opportunities in the organization that they can help you. Again, right? You work for a boss, not a company. And so if you work for a good boss in a so-so company, you're going to be fine. If you work for a bad boss in a good company, No, you're not. You're going to have a really hard time, and you're going to cause yourself a lot of stress. So you need to understand these things. So I figured, Melly, we'll kind of throw out some topics here around this on from my experience and yours in the food safety area. What makes for a good boss? And we broke these into kind of like personality traits, and then the actions that you see the boss taking. Right? These things are super, super important. Cheryl, good morning. Nice to see you, my friend. So for personality traits, I think transparency is super important, right? You need to know, Melody, with your boss, what they're doing and why they're doing it.
Yeah, well, and then, well, in a sense, it's an open communication environment. And then for food safety and quality, it's extremely important to hear people out, to give constructive feedback, not based on, in a sense, it's transparent as well. Like you can tell the team member, and team member can share with you anything they would like to share. And then being a boss, I think that I'm trying to do it better here, is trying to hear the team member out based on their needs rather than based on our own or the boss's own experience. And that's quite important as well.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. So, I mean, with the transparency side, obviously as a boss, you can't share everything, right? There's personal information and confidential things that you can't share, but there's a whole lot of stuff that you can, right? Relative to how the organization is going, what the direction is, how you are leading the group in those areas. And everybody needs to understand these things so that it's consistent. You don't want to be someone who is withholding information. And some people will do this because they think it helps them, but in reality, it hurts you. So a transparent boss is super important. And on that side, and this goes in it too, is consistency. Human beings like consistency. So as a boss, you need to build that in and have a routine that your team is used to. So on Monday mornings at 9 o'clock, you have a team meeting, right? Come rain or shine, there is a team meeting. If you're on a plane at that time, it's probably not a good decision, right? You need to have that consistency. That's why with this food safety chat, we do it every week at the same time, right? You build that consistency and people come to expect that. It's kind of like, it builds familiarity, right? And so it ties into, I think, with the transparency piece, right? Because then everybody understands. One of the things I used to do with my quality systems team at WhiteWave is we would have a meeting, and I had a big whiteboard put in my office, and we put up the goals for the quarter, and then we would go over those. And at the Monday meeting, we would go around, and we didn't do this in the conference room. We just sat in my office and did this, and it'd be like, okay, so what are you working on? What are you working on? What are you working on? Here's what I'm working on. Okay, everybody go, right? Like a football huddle or something like that. And off we would go.
Yeah, I agree. And then consistency also, in a sense, not like besides the routine, the operation side, also be consistency on your decision making. And not like if I decided this and then things changed all of a sudden, the whole direction changed. Well, absolutely, I understand if there's a reason the business direction changed. But it's just trying to be consistency on the decision as well.
That's super important. Very good point, Melody. One of the things I would train my quality managers in is that there's 3 buckets of decisions that you need to think about. Let's say you're a quality manager in a plant. The first bucket of things that you have is operational data. So pounds per man hour, downtime on the line, energy consumption, how long it takes for sanitation, all of the things that the plant manager needs to run the business. This data needs to be gathered, and that's great. But from a quality standpoint, it's not driving any decisions in your area. The next group then is food quality information. So things that aren't impacting food safety. So for example, weight of the product, is the packaging aligned correctly? All the things that the consumer expects when they buy your product. The third bucket then is, of course, the food safety bucket. And this is that right, wrong, good, bad bucket where you need to be extremely strong. And I would always make sure very, very clear with my quality team that that third bucket, the food safety, is easy, right? If you think there's a food safety issue, let me know and I will back you 100%, right? There's no compromise on food safety. To your point, the business decision is in the food quality arena, right? Because there's a spectrum there.
Mhm.
And quality's job is to get the data, meet with the management team, and decide the right course of action for the business.
Mhm.
And a lot of times, quality people get those two groups confused, right? They will think that the quality things are safety things, and they'll dig in when they really shouldn't dig in.
Yep.
And
Yep.
I think, and really that consistency piece that really helped trigger that around that, because that was a really good observation on your point. Um, Making decisions in advance provides that consistency. People need to know, if this happens, this is how Bryan will react, right? And they know in advance. They know what I'm going to say before I say it. And if you get to that point, you're being consistent.
Yep. It's hard though.
Oh yeah, it's a constant effort.
Yeah.
Austin had a comment here. Humility, absolutely, is a great skill to have as well. If leadership displays humility, then it makes it easier for employees to bring up potential risks. 100%,
Mhm.
100%, right? If you become so infatuated with your, I'm the vice president of so and so and right, and you get so wrapped up in that, you're not going to be in that role for long.
Yeah, absolutely. And that remind me another thing I am thinking a good boss, and that's actually what I learned through the career, and especially my current boss, that is the ego. And
Mm,
we don't have ego. Like a good boss wouldn't have ego as well. It's the reason you are driving the boat. And this is first thing I learned from my boss. It's really nice. He's really good boss. um, a good boss also rely on the expertise from the team. So the less you are, or I'm the VP or I am the COO, I know everything, it wouldn't trigger a good performance. It just, it's let's all work together. There's no title, it's the team that we are contributing in the business value, because ultimately we all work for the business. So
mhm.
I think that is really a good skill for a boss too. Just less ego on the boss. Like we can make mistakes. We're fine, make mistakes. We don't know everything. I mean, that's why I have you in the team. I
Yeah.
grow your expertise. You're helping our team in general to become a good, valuable resource for the business.
Absolutely, 100%. And so one of the things I worked really hard on in the organization was putting together good objectives. And so a lot of times the organizational goals are kind of fuzzy, right? They're very abstract and they're written in flowery words. And a lot of times it's very difficult to get that into language that works for your department. But I would really try and figure that out every single year and put objectives for the quality department and then objectives for each person in my team. And I worked really, really hard to make sure that those things all stacked, right? So that everything was consistent. Because if there's a mismatch, then the organization doesn't understand why you're doing what you're doing. And that's not a good place to be.
Yep, yep. I was just reading the notes from one of the user. Leaders must understand that FS and kill, it is not a function of a post-mortem information, but working on all preventive measures, sanitation, pre-op, CIP, inspection, documents review. Yep, we are everything. We do everything. Yeah.
Yep. And that's why I say that quality is the conscience of the organization, right? We get in everybody's shorts, right?
Right. Yeah.
We're the group going over to procurement and saying, hey, what you doing?
Right. Right.
Right. So it's a unique role we have in that capacity.
Yeah.
Um,
Echo back to your objective, I was thinking also for a QA food safety leader, it's very necessary to understand what are the business objectives and translate them to what are our team objectives. Then translate it layer down to what are each employee's objectives. That way they feel related. They can all support with their own goals. You meet your team goals meet your business goals. So
right.
I think it's always good to tie in business, team, and the individual, and
Yeah.
that will more collaborate together.
Yes, a good leader is integrating quality into the rest of the organization. And that's a
Mhm,
challenge sometimes
mhm,
to do
mhm,
that, right?
mhm.
And doing that through the objectives is a great way to do that. Um, here's one that I think is super important, right? Is the boss's job is to make himself obsolete. the boss's job, right? If you're a director or a vice president and you want to get to the next level, you need to train your team members to be able to do your job. And a lot of times managers get very scared by that, right? But looking back over my career, Melody, some of the things that I'm most proud of is the people I've been able to help advance. And now I have former team members of mine who are now vice presidents of quality at other food companies. And I love that.
Yeah, that's all. That is a great point. It is. In order for you to move up, you have to have somebody can help you to support you take your position. So in a sense, we all work together. Yes, absolutely agree.
Yep. And oh, good morning, Jill. Nice to see you. And what's interesting too, right, is these 2 points kind of tie together, because if you do a great job of helping your team grow and make yourself obsolete, and you have good objectives that are tied to what the organization is doing, that means then that the company is going to see your team. Here's something that we used to do at a company I used to work for. So here's a little behind the scenes look at the leadership level within a large company. Is we would get together every quarter, all the senior leaders, and we would do a rotation, and every team member in this group had to bring to the table one of their star performers on their team and talk about that person and say, okay, here is this person. She does this and this and this, and she's really good at that. And the idea was to open up these borders between the different groups, so that if an opening in the engineering group on the technical development and plant design and those type of things opened up, and I had a team member on my group, that was a potential fit, that may be a path, right? It's not always, where you just go straight up. You need to think about these type of things too. And people talk, right? We're all people. And getting the reputations of those performers out there to the other leaders in the organization was extremely valuable in helping grow my team.
Absolutely. And I want to extend a little bit on your point on that, because I was thinking that's one thing I read from a book as well, the 5 Dysfunction book. What's it called? The 5 Dysfunction of a Team.
Well, hold it up there for everybody so they can.
Yeah. I really like this book. I got it. I read it twice when I was starting my leadership. So one thing the author Patrick was mentioning is also, if you have a multifunction team, let's say 3 or 4 multifunction team, it's always nice to encourage your team member that they know other functioning teams, what they're doing, so they can back each other up. So let's say under your team, you have R&D, you have sensory, you have food safety, you have audit. They seem, and you have lab testing. They are individual functioning to support this big team, but it's good. Each team knows the other team to do. So in case some other team leaders, they're leaving, this person, let's say lab testing, can take auditing's job easily. That also based on what all you just said, the consistency, the transparent, the encouragement, the morale of the team. So they are confident that they can know other functioning team's job without being or feeling any insecure. And that's a good, healthy team as well. It just extend a little bit on what you're talking about. There is an open in other team, same thing. And there is, other functioning teams working, and then in case something happened, we can back each other up. And this is extremely important within a food safety and quality organization or team.
Absolutely. And so on the personality side too, Melody, I think there's some key attributes here, right? Is, to your point, is grace under pressure, right? Because if a food safety crisis happens, everybody looks to the leader, right? In the quality group. And you have to be rock solid, right? Here's our plan. Here's what we're going to do. Here's how we're going to investigate. Here's the next step that we're going to take, period, right? Everybody is looking for that, and you have to be able to do that. And building in that is all part of what we're talking about, this consistency and these objectives and all these type of things that you need to bring to the table as a leader in the organization.
Right.
But the other side of this coin too, right? And this is why these things are so difficult, right? It takes a lot of work. And if you just focus on the technical side of things, I'm going to get really good at FSMA and PCQI and all these type of things, that's only part of the equation, right? Everything that we're talking about here today, finishes it out, right? Rounds you out as a good leader in the organization to do these things, right? Because you have to do this with other people. So the other piece of this too is you can't be serious all the time, right? You have to be a person, and you have to have a sense of humor, right? And be able to show that and explain it and talk about that. One of my previous quality managers, do you remember Sharper Image, right? So I think they're still kind of around, but not like they used to be. He bought, and this guy was hilarious. He bought an animatronic monkey head that sat in his office. And the thing was big. It was like 3 foot tall.
Yeah.
And it would react to motion, and the eyes would move and all these type of things. And we would always joke that he wasn't in charge. It was the monkey who was running quality, right? And so I would call him about something, and a decision that needed to be made. And I'd be like, well, what's the monkey say? And he would be like, the monkey agrees. The monkey, all right, there we go, right? And so you got to inject some humor and some levity in these situations as well too, right? Because what we're doing is so serious. You have to be able to balance those things too.
Yeah. I just want to call out Joe's comments, which is a very good add-on comment, that it makes she said it helps everyone appreciate each other, know the other's function, and hear what's happening. It's so true. I tried it out with my previous functioning team, and then all of a sudden people understand each other, where her struggle is, where his challenges are. It's really, yes, I absolutely agree with Joe. Yeah. And I forgot that point. It's a good point. Yeah.
Yes. Sometimes, and this is kind of a personality thing too, right? Is some people have a hard time listening, right? They want to be talking all the time. Mm-hmm. I remember a guy I used to work with who you'd be talking with him, and during the conversation, and you figure this out pretty quick, right? This is one of those blind spots we were talking about that people have. He would tune out of the conversation. He was a super, super smart guy, and he had a million things going on. And if something caught his attention in his brain, you knew it, because he would start going, and you knew he wasn't listening to you anymore. You could say anything you wanted, and he'd go, right? So you need to be empathetic and pick up on those things, right? So that I learned in those conversations, if that was happening, I would say his name, and then that would snap him back to the conversation.
Or ask him a question.
Yeah, exactly, right? You need to pick up on those things. Right. So all of these things, right? I think probably one of the most important personality traits, Melody, and this kind of ties everything together, is they care about you as a person, right? They know your family. They know the struggles you're going through, and they can help you with those and react to those depending on how you'd like to manage that. And it's something you can't fake, right? You have to be able to understand your team and develop those relationships. And a lot of times when you work in technical fields like I do, and you do, and a lot of people do, is that gets glossed over, like, that doesn't matter. It totally matters. Totally matters.
Yeah. Another thing I thought about it, because I keep thinking my current boss, I want to call it out. One more, he's really a good boss. I learned a lot of his skill. I think another thing we also need to mention is the trust between the boss and your team member. And how we build up the trust. It's also like what you talked about, and also the caring part, also knowing who you are, what's your personality. Of course, a boss wouldn't blind trust anyone, but it also takes two parties to work together to make the bond. And then once the trust is there, it makes a lot of things easier, actually. The communication, the decision, even sometimes argument. I went in fight. Fight is good. Fight, it makes sparkle. But those all in all is built on trust. That's another good aspect, I think.
Fighting makes sparkle. I love that.
Right. That's what I mean. That's because
I'm going to steal that. I like that. Jill had a comment here. It takes an intentional leader to recognize the value of bringing functions together, creating time and setting the expectation to learn from each other. What did you find worked well to support your teams in that area? Wow. Good question, Jill. I'll let you tackle that one, Melody.
What did you find worked well to support your team in this area? You mean in food safety and quality? Let me think.
I have an example while you're thinking.
Yeah, go ahead.
So so the past company, the quality and the R&D groups worked really, really close together. And the company moved very, very fast with new products. And we were having some failures, right? Where there wasn't good communication, things like that. So I got together with the head of R&D and we put together a little mini conference at a hotel by work. And we got together and talked about the different things that we did, and we did exercises. And one of the things that we did is we put together a Jeopardy game. And we had all these categories of the design control process and all these different type of things. And then we had teams competing against each other. And it was a blast. It was a ton of work to put together, but the team building between those two groups, it was totally worth it.
Yeah, yeah. And then sometimes I think it's naturally happen. For example, a lot of function team works together naturally within an organization. For example, buyers, auditors, internal auditor, and R&D. And what's missing, I guess, it's a leader's recap. Like, for example, it's always a constant battle, the buyers versus the quality auditors. But then they actually naturally work together. The buyers goes out with the auditor to look at their perspective auditing the supplier. The auditors sit through buyer's negotiation call. So what takes a little bit step ahead forward is a leader or a boss sit down and recap. Here's what buyer's priority. Why the argue or no argue? Why the challenge occur? Because the buyer thinks the priority based on their function. The auditor thinks the priority based on the auditor's function. So they will already naturally work together with these two completely different functions. But the good boss or good leader could take a recap meeting afterward and then consider and let the team member know here's their priorities, here's their problems.
Right. Well, and it's the leader of quality needs to recognize that different functions have different objectives. And the R&D groups is to develop new products, right? And marketing is to find what new products the consumers want. And the sales job is to get clients for, and the procurement group has completely different objective, right? Their job is to buy things and get them to the plant on time and make sure it's the right product and it's not damaged and the POs are paid and all these type of things, right? The head of quality, their job then, and this goes back to our conversation of the organization, is to make sure that in all those groups that food safety is included, right? It needs to be in procurement's objectives for food safety. And once you align those things get a lot easier.
Yeah. Yeah.
But no, good point, Jill. Thank you. So that's kind of the personality side of these type of things too. But there's actions as well, right? So you have all these type of activities, but there's actions that your bosses let you do and what they do as a boss, right? So there's talking and then there's doing, right? We're kind of talking about the doing piece now. And a huge part of that is you don't want a boss who's a micromanager, right? And won't give up anything and won't let you make mistakes. Right? If you're in the department and let's say that you're in supplier quality, that's yours, right? That's not the VP's, that's yours, right? You need to understand your objectives and you need to operate within that and manage your role. It's your job.
Yeah. Yeah. Speaking of that, the micromanaging, I think yes, on one hand, we look at I always look at things different perspective. And when I was an employee, I also don't like my boss tell me exactly what to do. But then years later, I also changed my perspective. I think it's more of he or she is using her experience to guide you, avoid unnecessary mistakes for the business. Once you prove your capability, you can do this project on your own, then I think those micromanaging will be gone. It's just, I think it's the very beginning and they might apply. It seems they are micromanaging at the very beginning of the stage, but it actually, it's not long-term advice.
Well, yeah. I think that's a good example then of building that trust bond, right? And
exactly. Yeah.
And when you have a new employee, you need to figure out what are the right boundaries for that person, right? And how much do they need? There was a plant manager in my past, a super plant manager, really, really good leader of his teams. And I remember sitting in his office one time and his supervisor for a cheese manufacturer came running into his office, and we were sitting there talking. And he's like, "Oh my God, we got a big problem." And so the plant manager sat back and said, "Okay, well, tell me about that." And the person explained the problem and what was going on and these type of things. And I knew the correct course of action. He knew the correct course of action. But what he did stuck with me. And I learned this lesson a long time ago. He turned to the supervisor and he went, "What do you think we should do about that?" And then the supervisor thought about it and said, "We should do this." And it was the right thing. And then he said, "Great, let's do that." Right? It would have been really, really, really easy for that plant manager to go, and jump up and go save the day. Right? Wrong. Right? He knew that his supervisor was trustworthy, to your point. He knew that he could make these decisions correctly, and he was helping him grow. Right?
Yeah, that's very
Super
good.
important.
Yeah.
As a boss, you have to be very careful about this. If you let their problems become your problems, they're happy. A lot of people are happy to do that. Right? They need to figure out their own solutions.
Yeah.
And that can be hard sometimes.
Yeah.
On that side of that too, right, is the blame game, right? If bosses need to look for systems, right? It's not people, it's systems. Why did this system not work correctly in this instance, right? If a boss says, who did this? Why who failed, right? Ooh, that's not good, right? They fail because there was probably a system, right? And you need to figure out and keep it at that level. And on your team, if people start talking with that language, it needs to be corrected pretty quickly.
Yeah, I always think about that root cause analysis can be applied here. Like why it happened, how it happened. And then as boss, you need to have that capability to do the root cause and find the root cause. Because sometimes it's not employee, it is the system, it's the business operation caused the behavior. So we should be able to find that root cause. Yeah.
Exactly. Right. And so we've been talking about this, but we haven't specifically called it out, right? They mentor you, right? So part of this is the boss understanding what it is the employee wants, right? Do they want a promotion? Do they want to move up? Do they want to maybe go to a plant and be a quality manager in a plant? What is their career path? What are they thinking? And then helping them move in that direction. Huge.
Exactly. Yeah. And then sometimes a good boss can see a employee cannot see. You might see some of the employee be a little bit more humble or shy. They are not that self-confident, but a good boss is that to dig that part out and then tell him or her, you can do this. I see you can do this. And chances are 80% or 100% put that people up in that position, she or he can do it very well. That's also like a coaching or like mentoring or a leadership out.
Right, and that's where those objectives become so important, right? Where you align those correctly. And I would always build into people's objective as a section there. I had one for me too, always, of development and growth. What do you want to do? What classes do you want to take? What do you want to learn? What do you want to explore? It doesn't even have to be in what you do. What are you interested in? And then build those things out. And one of my rules, and if I didn't do this correctly, it was a failure on my part, was if you do this correctly, Melody, quarterly reviews and annual reviews are never a surprise. Right? You sit down with the employee and they rate themselves first, and then they give that to you. And what you rate them at and what they rate themselves at should always match pretty close. If there's if the employee says, "I'm a superstar," and you're like, not so much, right? That's a failure on your part as manager, because you're not communicating to them where they need to strengthen their abilities. And if that happens, then you need to do some course correction, which is why you should never wait for an annual review. Ideally, you should be sitting down with your employees at least every quarter and going over the objectives and saying, "Okay, how are we doing? Have you signed up for that SQF course yet?" "Oh, no, I haven't done that." Well, you probably get moving on that, right? There's not many openings left. You need to get signed up for that. And you get that feedback process going so that they understand exactly where they're at and where they're going. So looks like Melody's frozen there a little bit. We'll keep going here. They help your career, right? So as you're going through this, they're helping and developing so that you can get to those next levels. Super important. Also, they're not rigid, right? This kind of gets into the humor and the other aspects relative to that person and how they're doing things. And being able to communicate with them as a person is super important, super, super important. So with that, right, we've kind of talked about the personality traits that are important for a boss and for you working for a boss, right? These things are interchangeable, because if you're wanting to be promoted within your company, you may want to become a boss as well, right? So you need to think about these personality traits. And then the behaviors of that boss, right? And those are always on display, always on display. It doesn't matter if it's a offsite company function, an informal gathering, team activities, working in a plant or whatever, always on display. And you need to take those actions and demonstrate them, right? We're all familiar with the saying, right? Walk the talk, right? So you have to walk the talk as a boss. And in the food safety space, that is even more important. So, all right, we've been talking a lot about these bosses, and where are they, right? Oh, we lost Melody. Oh, here she's back. Oh, there you are.
Already.
Oh, that's okay. So I was just kind of closing out here on the personal traits of a boss and the actions that a boss takes, which should be the same for you too. Same for you too. So part of this then is, where are these bosses, right? Where are these people that you want to work for, right? And part of this is your responsibility, right, Melly? You need to find them and seek them out. And you have to remember that when you're interviewing, it's just not you interviewing for a job, you're interviewing them, right? You're trying to figure these things out. And if you're considering a position, you absolutely 100% every time you have to speak with and be interviewed by the person you're going to work for, period. Right? If that can't be arranged, don't move forward until you can, right? You have to understand that. And this circles back to the beginning, right? You don't work for a company, you work for a boss. And if you have a boss who isn't demonstrating these capabilities, you're going to be not too happy.
I agree. And then chances are in the interview, when you interact with your future boss, you will sense the culture, because the boss is the employee as well. So you will see how the company, the morale, the culture is as being a leader and being an employee. Yeah, definitely.
Exactly. Yeah, I remember one conversation one time with my boss, and he was running operations, and all of these things that we're listing here going through my mind, I'm thinking about him a lot of the time. And boy, he was good. And I remember I had a problem, and it was with a co-packer, and they weren't being cooperative, and I was, telling him about what was going on and what I was doing about it. And he was just bam, he's like, "You tell me what you need. If I need to get them on the phone, we're going to call them right now. 100%, this is unacceptable." I knew without a doubt he had my back.
Oh, that's very nice. That's very lucky. You are very lucky.
I was.
Yeah.
And I knew it, right? Because I was able to identify these things. And a lot of times it's a feeling like, oh yeah, good boss, right? But it's these things that we're talking about. It's behaviors and actions. And our goal overall, right? And this never ends, right? Our goal is to become more like this in whatever we do. It just makes us better people, and it makes us better leaders, and it's super important. Any other closing thoughts here, Melody?
And first, I'm sorry, my internet somehow went down, and I'm glad I'm back, because I really want to echo this book. I will use it is The 5 Dysfunction of a Team. I'll use one thing, it resonated me till today after I read it a couple years ago, is that a boss could be absent. Like how you vision a good team is that whenever the boss isn't there, the team function without you, just as you are there. That is a good team. That takes a lot to build, takes a lot of skills, everything that we just discussed. But we will all get there. We can do that.
Oh, that's perfect. I love it. Great way to close. So I hope we've been able, so in food safety, what we're talking about here is doubly important, right? Because you have to demonstrate all these attributes for the entire organization. And if you don't do these in advance, and God forbid something awful happens in the company, like a recall or things like this, it's not going to go well, right? You have to prepare and develop these skills It's not all technical. It's also the people and the personality and being an effective leader. So don't forget that, right? That's the main lesson. Hopefully people are able to take away. And I wanted to call out here, and Jill has been a guest on our show, Jill Stuber. You can see her in the messages here, Stuber. She's a coach, and she helps people with this, and she does amazing work in that area. So if you want to continue these conversations on that side, I know Jill would be very happy to speak with you. She's very easy to reach here on LinkedIn. So I wanted to call out Jill on this as well, right? And reach out to her. She's amazing. Barbara, thanks for the conversation. Absolutely. We enjoyed it. Right. And so I think, right. And we wanted to emphasize here, right, that no matter what we do, we're people, right? And we have blind spots, we have strengths, we have weaknesses. And the more that we understand those, the more we can grow and evolve as people. And I think that's really important.
Yeah, and then I think, if I may, I would like to call out as well the community. It's also important you join a community that you can share your soft skill, your technical skill, like what you do, Bryan, the Food Safety Foundation. Like a lot of time, our food safety professionals, we stand in our own zones, but actually there's a lot of people experiencing the same thing. It's good you join a community to share your experience as well. You're not alone. Everybody is so related to what you have already experienced. And another thing is for students as well, like they might not know what they expect to enter the industry. There is a community there too. We have Women in Food Safety. You can also join, and then we can help you with a lot of questions. It's a community that we all help each other, then we become stronger together.
That's a super good point. Thank you. A lot of times we feel that we have to take the burden on ourselves, and there's a lot of help and a lot of resources and a lot of people with a lot of experience who are more than happy to help you get to that next level. So please reach out, right? And join those groups.
Yeah.
So perfect way to end. Thank you, Melody.
Yeah.
So everybody, of course, we're here again next Friday, right? So please join us, and same time. So we are on LinkedIn, Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter at 8 a.m. Mountain, 10 a.m. Eastern, and we'll talk about a new conversation around food safety. But this was a great one. Thank you, Melody. I really enjoyed it.
Thank you, Bryan, for having me.
All right. Well, thanks, everybody. Have a good day.
Have a nice weekend. Bye.